death, snakes, and public speaking. What do these three have in common? Research indicates that 74% of Americans experience some anxiety associated with public speaking, although many would rather experience a snake than have to get up in front of an audience and speak. So realize that anxiety in this situation is the norm, not the exception. I'm Dr. Alexa Chilcutt. I'm the director of the public speaking program here at the University of Alabama and your online lecturer. Each week I'm going to be posting the lectures to Blackboard. You'll get a notification. Typically they will be short videos that correspond with a lesson that is in your online textbook. I would recommend that you go to Blackboard, look at the online link that I've created to purchasing that textbook. It's a little cheaper than it is in the soup store. If you're on scholarship, you need to go to the soup store, but otherwise, that's the better way to do it. You will be attending lab this Wednesday, the first half week of classes. Make sure that you look at your schedule, understand the lab number that you're in, the time, and the room here in Reese-Pfeiffer. If you go to our Blackboard page, your lab instructors have already created content pages on the side of that, and so you can see who your lab instructor is and click in that content page to look at their information, their email, their office hours, as well as my office hours are on Blackboard and my email. Feel free to contact me at any point in time. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and cover part of Lesson 1, which is the Introduction to Public Speaking. Make sure that you're in that lab tomorrow because your lab instructor will be going over the syllabus, the schedule, the speech assignments, and basically the general information that you're going to need for this semester. Their job in this lab is not just to go through the speeches and to grade them, but to really create a culture of encouragement that you're all in this together. Nobody wants to take public speaking, and we know that. It's okay. But whether you're an engineering major, an education major, a PR major, a sports or health sciences major, anything, you are going to have the opportunity in your professional career that if you are a better public speaker, you're going to have more opportunities to advance through that career or even get the job. Because when you're speaking to a group of professional peers and sharing ideas or persuading them, how effective you are in crafting that message, cultivating dynamic delivery, resonating with that audience is really going to speak to your success. So let's look at what public speaking is about. Honestly, it's about the study of the power and effectiveness of speakers and their messages. We know that many speakers, and you see them all the time, are not good. It's not that even they don't have a good message, but maybe they're not good at delivering it. Possibly they just have a bad message and still aren't very good at delivering it. It takes practice. It's like athletics or music or dance. You have to understand the technical side of the skill and then practice, because there are no perfect public speakers, but only degrees of polish, and practice makes better. We see funny examples of very bad public speaking all the time. Here's one from Ricky Bobby in Talladega Nights.
It'd be good to hold down by your side. Yeah, great.
Well, we were real happy with what was going on, and at the end of the day, you got to be happy.
What did you say his name was again?
His name is Ricky.
Ricky Bobby. All great speakers, let me go back here, all great speakers were bad speakers at first. There is a myth, the myth of winging it. Maybe you can let that happen once or twice, but in this class, there are going to be specific speeches for specific purposes, given specific kind of citations of sources and credibility, as well as time limits. And so you're going to need to learn how to craft that message very effectively. But throughout the ages, we realize that even when you watch some of the greatest speakers, they have practiced that speech. In fact, the guy who wrote Talk Like TED interviewed 50 of the top TED Talks. He interviewed those speakers. In other words, who did the TED Talks that were viewed the most? And so when he interviewed those 50 speakers, one of the questions that he asked was, how many times did you practice your speech, your talk? Now, in a TED Talk, the maximum is 18 minutes. The average number that those speakers, each one, rehearsed that TED Talk was 200 times. It's probably why they were the most viewed speeches or talks, because they had practiced them to the point that they were conversational. Not very memorized and stiff, but they knew them, they were confident, and they had a great message. They had practiced so much that they had gotten all of the disfluencies out, the ums, and like your nose. It takes practice to make it seem flawless, just like it does in any craft. So our objective in this course is, number one, it's designed to teach you how to craft powerful, meaningful, and cogent messages for a variety of different uses, purposes, and audiences. If you're an engineer and you get out of school, you're a mechanical engineer, and you have to talk about a mechanical process, but your audience is a very general audience. They don't know the jargon, the lingo, the technical aspects of that process that you're trying to explain to them. Then you have to think about how you can communicate that in a way that's going to resonate with them in clear, concise language. So diverse audiences, that's what that means. Who's your audience? What do they know about the subject? Where are they on the issue if it's a persuasive speech? And crafting the message to really suit their needs or for them to be receptive to that message. The second purpose here is to empower you to overcome the fear of public speaking and self-presentation. So, in other words, we understand that you're anxious about this, and that's okay. We're all in it together. But also, you have to realize that this is a wonderful opportunity for you to grow as an individual. How do you want to see yourself, and how do you want others to see you? Because when you are a public speaker, you're in front of people, not only are they listening to your message, but they are making a lot of judgments about how credible you are as an individual. So we want to help you build and create and design that best self that you can possibly have when you're representing your ideas and thoughts. Third, we want to inspire you to realize the power of your words and encourage you to share them in an effective and receivable manner. We want you in these assignments, in the demonstration speech, the informative speech, and the persuasive speech, to pick topics that you're genuinely interested in, that you're possibly for the demonstration speech, what are you good at showing? What are you good at doing? Bring that into the classroom and share those ideas. For an informative speech, possibly pick a topic that you're passionate about or that you want to know about, because you're going to have to research for that speech. But we want you to share those ideas because you actually have a great opportunity to impact 25 people or 22 people in this class that you're going to be with all semester. You're going to be hearing each other's ideas and sharing ideas. You're not going to agree with all of them all the time, but that's okay. You're also going to learn how to be a critical listener and thinker, but be respectful of other people's ideas as well, and listen to them and try and kind of think of things in a different way. So, in a nutshell, we're going to help you take kind of a jumble of ideas, brainstorm those ideas, but then be very specific about the target. What is the purpose of the message? What is the time limit of the message? Who's your audience? What are you trying to convey? This is what we're going to do. We're going to help you understand the process and craft meaningful messages, cultivate dynamic delivery, and calm public speaking anxiety. There are 3 purposes. This is in lesson 1. There are 3 purposes to any speech occasion. Number 1 is to inform. As I said, in any career that you're going to go into, even the interview situation might be a situation where you have to do a talk or tell about yourself. You're having to inform an audience about you personally. But in your career, you're going to have many opportunities where you're informing a group, whether it's a board or a group of peers, about a topic, what you know. You don't want to rehash old information. You want to be bringing them new, in-depth information, things that they don't know about the topic to keep them interested. The second purpose is to persuade. We've seen horrible examples of this in the last 2 years. But there might be something that you want to persuade the audience to take a specific action on, something that you're passionate about. Maybe it's some type of volunteering. Possibly it's about recycling a certain way. Yes, everybody agrees in recycling and that it's a good thing, but are they actually doing it? What is some specific action that you can convince your audience to do or take part in? So we're going to teach you how to kind of craft a message, bring research that speaks to that topic, and have a problem-cause solution that is a little more effective than what we've seen. And then entertaining. The third purpose of public speaking, so we had inform, persuade, and now entertain. Many times that people are public speakers, they're in front of an audience. You've seen motivational speeches, comedies, comedians. Then you have that opportunity. They're not necessarily sharing weighty or persuasive information, but they are in front of an audience to motivate, inspire, entertain. So we understand that public speaking is really the art of speaking well. But before we even get there, and this is the second part of this introduction, so hang on with me. It's only going to be a couple more minutes, but we're going to look at communication. Many of you, this is the only communication course that you're going to take here at the University of Alabama. And so we want to give you a little context of communication before we launch into the specifics of public speaking. So let's look at what communication is. The Latin etymology of the word communication means to share or to put in common. In other words, I want to share my ideas, my thoughts with someone else or with many people. So the communication word, as I said, in Latin it's communicare. It means to share or to put in common. Now, is that simple? Actually, no. Because if it were simple, there would be no conflict. There would be no misunderstandings. You wouldn't have fights or fallouts with roommates or boyfriends or girlfriends. All of that would be really simple, right? Well, it's not simple. It's not as simple as having a sender of a message send that message linearly to a receiver, and that receiver get the message in the way that the sender intended it. It's not that way. In fact, one of the earliest models of communication was Berlow's model in 1960. And what he said was, hey, there are some factors we have to take into consideration. The first one is that this sender, the person who's crafting the message, has their own level of communication skills. Going back to that engineering or that business person, you have a level of understanding about a topic that may be specific to your knowledge. So communication skills, attitude, knowledge, social system, culture. The sender is very unique. And then they have to think about the message that they're trying to construct. So go back to English 101 and 102, right? What words are you putting together in sentences that are crafting a message? And so the context, the elements, the treatments, etc. But then we have to think about the channel of communication. We all communicate today in very flat, not rich channels. In other words, texting. Well, you can't read a lot into text. You can't read the person's emotion. You can't see their facial gestures or hear their tone of voice. And so LOL does not cover a multitude of sins. Email is the same way. It's a very flat context. But interpersonal communication or public speaking is a very rich context because we see people, we hear them, we understand what they're doing with their body language, or we're trying to. We hear kind of the meaning behind the message. But then what Berlow said was that you also have to really take into consideration the receiver, their communication skills, so their education level, their use of language, their attitude, their knowledge, their culture, their background. So when the sender is formulating the message, they should already be thinking about who they're formulating the message for and how they're going to craft it and what channel they're going to use so that the person actually gets the intended message. Now, some of the things that Berlow didn't do really well, or that he didn't think about. Yes, he got us a basic structure, but he also didn't think about what gets in the way of receptiveness of messages. Now, especially in face-to-face context, we have noise. We have internal noise, we have external noise. So think about internal noise. You didn't eat breakfast, but you had to run to class, and so your stomach is growling. You're thinking about when it's going to get out so that you can go get something to eat. That internal noise is really blocking you from listening to the lecture because your mind is thinking about something else, right? Internal noise could also be any kind of psychological noise that's going on, worrying about the test in the next class. That's keeping you from being receptive. Secondly, you've got external noise. So you're trying to listen to a speaker, but people are walking by in the hall, cell phones are ringing, babies are crying. That's external noise. Also, language is symbolic. Language, what you intend to mean by a word, is not always received that way. So I could use the word flight, F-L-I-G-H-T. A flight could mean many things. A flight of birds, a mass exodus, a delta flight, a flight of stairs. So we have to understand that language is symbolic, and how you use a word may have different meanings to different people. So taking all of that into consideration is it's a thoughtful process. Let's look at the types of communication. You probably already know this intuitively. You have interpersonal. So I'm talking to my roommate about what we're doing this weekend or what classes I have on my schedule. That's interpersonal communication. It can be very informal. You can use slang. You can, have inside jokes because it makes sense to that other individual. Intrapersonal is the communication that's going on in your head before you call a parent to ask them for money because, you did something else with it besides buy books. Before they pick up the phone, you're already thinking about how are you going to construct that message and what are you going to say. So that's intrapersonal communication. You have group communication. You're all, stuck in teams or groups when you get into classes and have to do projects. It can be great, it can be horrible. But we have to understand that that's a different type of communication as well because you're having to negotiate a lot of different elements there. Then you have mass communication, which we're all just way too familiar with. Media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, television, radio, all of those things. There is a third party that the communication goes through to generate a message that is received by many, many people. And then we have public communication, or what we're going to refer to as public speaking. Public speaking is very unique, and it's unique in 4 different ways. So in public speaking, there are 4 different things that set it apart from those other types of communication. The first one is that it has to be a little more formal. If you're in front of a group, you can't use slang. You want to think about not using a lot of verbal fillers, and you need to understand that there's a logical flow to your information, so it's more formal. The second thing is something that you're going to be talking about more as you progress in labs with your assignments. It's called signposting. So it's the axiom, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Yes, it's true. In a public speaking situation, you have a short, limited amount of time. And so it's most effective if you have an organizational pattern that begins by saying, this is what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to do this in 3 different parts. 1, 2, 3. And as you go through that speech, you're going to allude to those parts. Now that I've talked about this, I'm going to move on here. Because what that does is it allows the audience to follow along with you, but they also remember more of what you've spoken about. Sourcing. Now this is a little awkward. If you write a paper for English 101 or 102, you can cite sources in a reference or a bibliography. In a speech, you actually have to cite the sources orally. So according to the National Institute of Health in 2014, a study showed that in sourcing verbally, you are adding credibility to the information that you're providing to your audience, and they're seeing you as a legitimate source of information. They want to know that you got it from a current source as much as possible, from a credible, unbiased source, which is very difficult. You're going to have to really dig deep to figure out how to get some information. If it's scientific, it's going to be a little easier. And then it's the responsibility of one person. So if I'm up here talking, In this context, I don't have your feedback. I'm talking to a camera. It's a little awkward. But if you were sitting here in the lab with me in the speaking studio, I could see your faces and I'd be reading some nonverbal communication. So you would be communicating with me, just nonverbally. But in the spoken word, it is the responsibility of one person in a public speaking situation. So this concludes the first part of lesson 1 in your textbook, and also kind of an introduction to public speaking. I will be coming up to the labs this week and kind of popping my head in, making sure that you're all there and that things are going well. I'll also be kind of popping my head in during the semester to make sure that everybody's on point and doing some lab observations for my graduate students. But please feel free to email me at achilcutt@ua.edu or to stop by my office hours that are posted on Blackboard. Thank you.